everyone, my name's Myka. Thanks for coming out tonight, and thanks for the Web Meetup for having me and inviting me to talk about something that I love and want to share. And thanks for coming out. I think a lot of people risked some serious hay fever to get here, so that's pretty good. So just a super brief history about myself. My name is Myka. I'm from South Africa. I have an advertising background. I worked as a digital art director at Saatchi & Saatchi for a couple of years in their Cape Town office. And then I moved into interaction design and then finally found my love for user experience through them. So just briefly, some of the projects I worked on, myself and my team were responsible for multi-platform campaigns for Simba Chips, Virgin Active, Harley Davidson, and Pampers Global. And now, currently, I work for a company called Growth Ops in Melbourne. I work in their tech division as a senior UX and product designer. And we make digital products. So what that means is anything from like mobile apps, websites, games, all of those fun things. So some of our clients include Monash University, Movember, Insurance House, and Save the Children Foundation. And at the moment, we're working on an Internet of Things type of product, which is a home automation for RV vehicles. And our main focus is on products that have a positive impact on the world and with ourselves, and also just makes us feel good leaving the office every day. So some of the solutions that we've addressed are within our digital products are teaching children safety procedures, assisting at-risk expectant mothers, campus navigation for students, gamification of mindfulness for teens, encouraging fundraising and social change within the men's health section, which I'll get into a bit further. But basically what I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about is the single source of truth between these solutions and the process that brought all of these solutions and products to life, which is the design sprint. So more and more companies are getting involved or kind of hopping onto the design sprint train because the process is so effective. Companies like Uber, Apple, Coca-Cola, and even more kind of traditional companies like Lufthansa are starting to use design sprints to bring new products to life and just to make decisions basically off that. And apparently Google runs about 10 sprints a week just to get like new ideas to market, new products, and just kind of keeps the process going. So a design sprint can basically be used for anything from bringing a new product to market or looking at existing products, like adding a feature. It can be used for service design, business processes. A lot of banks use design sprints to make decisions and also get their process up and running. And the great thing is that with design sprints, the problem is not defined by the size. It can be a really granular problem, like what happens if you want a user to buy a book on an online bookstore, or it can be really macro. So like, how could you solve homelessness in Victoria? So the problem is not defined by the size, which is a really special thing about the design sprint. So a full disclaimer, these are just my thoughts as a snack. Some of it's a collection of ideas, some of it's original thinking, some of it's off the internet. And basically what I wanted to do tonight is just give you a snapshot of what the design sprint looks like and what that process means. Because a lot of these exercises and the processes are really fun to do. They're not that fun to talk about. So I'll take you through them fairly quickly. And also I'm going to make the assumption that most of us in the room are kind of aware of the language and the different processes that we use in our day-to-day work. And then again, I'll also leave you to explore that further if it's something that you're interested in. So basically, what is a design sprint? A design sprint is a collaborative process for answering critical business questions through design, prototyping, and testing ideas with customers and end users. The idea of sprints originates from the Agile framework. The aim of the design sprint is to avoid the endless debate cycle and compress months of decision-making into a few days. So the design sprint was conceived by these three fine gentlemen at Google Ventures, Jake Knapp being the main guy. They wrote the book, and there's many adaptations of the design sprint, but I would advise you to read the book because it is basically the single source of truth of how these design sprints and the processes run. And it's the basic main framework. And the book's really good. It's really digestible. It's a good read, and it's really straight to the point. So the design sprint is basically just a mixture of design thinking and collaboration. So design thinking is a word that I think we're all fairly familiar with. It's a mindset that is not problem-focused. It's solution-focused, and it's action-orientated towards a preferred future. I really like that term, like a preferred future. And then collaboration is the action of working with someone to produce something. So a design sprint is not to be confused with an agile sprint. An agile sprint is a system that we use to build software, whereas a design sprint is a process tool to solve a particular problem. So what does a design sprint team look like? Normally there's between 8 to 5 people in a room that we come together over about a 4 to 5 day period. And it will consist of mainly a facilitator or a creative lead, which is normally my role in the process. And my job is to basically facilitate the group and get the most out of the people within the organization and to get the most out of the exercises that we do together. And then we'll normally have like a product owner, which is the main decision maker, which we call on to make the really tough calls if we need to, make the decisions, and they know the product inside and out. And then we'll normally have like another product owner or product expert, which could either be a research person from the client side or a marketer. It just depends how we see fit to fill that role. Then we'll also have normally another person from our side, which would be a designer or a researcher or a QA lead. And then we also have a tech lead or an engineer or somewhere more software focused. So they're really good for feasibility and keeping time and just getting a more technical side of the product. And this just to make sure that we have a very strong mix of divisions and that make sure that we're not falling into any unconscious biases as we work. What does the week actually look like? Basically, all we do is compress our understanding, our creating, and our definition of the product, and our prototyping, and then also we test and we learn within 1 week. So normally the week ends like that, where we have a room full of heaps of paper and pens and stationery and ideas, and also there's some really good snacks generally. So what does a design sprint week actually look like? This is the design sprint 2.0, which has been condensed now into 4 days. It used to be 5. And I think that's just because a 5-day workshop is pretty expensive to have everyone in the room together. But now the new process is like a Monday to Thursday. We kind of call it day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, because essentially the first day could start on a Thursday and you could end on a Tuesday, given if you have a weekend in between, which is quite nice to do sometimes. So on the first day, you would do a map and a sketch, which is your discoverability and your understanding. That's when you have the whole group together. You have all the stakeholders and the client side and the creative side together. And then on Tuesday, you'll decide on what you actually want to do, what you want to build, your storyboard. Wednesday, you'll make a prototype. And then on the Thursday, you will test that prototype with real users. Again, there's a bit of leeway around this time because we've found that sometimes to prototype, you need a couple more days or you just want to give the idea some breathing room and do a bit more research. So it's a loose framework. So why do design sprints work? Basically, design sprints is a step-by-step cross-functional team effort to solve big problems. And this affords for a lot of different personalities to come together in the room in a really conductive way. So it's not always going to be the loudest voice that gets heard. It's not always going to be the person with the strongest personality or opinion. It's a really good place for everyone from different personalities to come together and get their opinions and their voices heard. So I've personally seen like extreme introverts really thrive in this environment just because of the nature of the processes where you are allowed to diverge, go think by yourself, take your time, and then come back together. You will have a tangible product at the end of it, so you'll actually have something to hold at the end of this process. The results are tested. So we are able to validate and test our assumptions, which is really important. We can get real user feedback. And basically, we figure out if we're right or if we're wrong. and we can realign and go from there. So also as a designer, it's really important for me to test my results and to test the product that we're making, because then I'm able to back my work up with like psychological reasoning and not just designing with a feeling, if I've got the data to prove it. There's alignment. So at the end of the process, or even during the process, you'll get to know your team better, you get to know the product better, you get to know your users better, and ultimately you're going to make better decisions and have a better outcome internally and externally. There's an actionable roadmap. So that means that everyone should know what comes next within the team. Sometimes a design sprint answers questions. Sometimes a product is taken to market. Sometimes we get it wrong and something doesn't test well. But then we know and we realign and we can move together as a team. But there's a freedom in that knowing, and everyone knows what their role is in the next steps. Minimal time. So basically, because all the exercises are time-boxed and voted on, the fat discussions are really cut down. And as a facilitator, sometimes if there's a discussion that's kind of going in a loop or we're not reaching a point, we'll call on the decision maker or the main product owner to make a call, yes or no, A or B, and then that's how we move forward. And by that way, as a whole team, we're taking action, and this keeps things going in a really progressive way. And we just cut down on heaps of meeting time and discussion time and just keep the process really lean. So just briefly, what did the few days actually mean that we spent together? So day one is to basically understand, where we get our expectations and our context together. So it's basically broken up between a morning and an afternoon session. So the first day we'll just get our goals aligned, and then in the afternoon we'll do like the fun exercises of mapping and sketching, doing some product demos and interviews, getting to know the persona. So this discovery phase is really important because it used to take ages to get that discovery phase going and get everyone aligned on what the product goals are. And it also just cuts through the cost of discovery and egos, because we all have egos, we all have ideas, we all have expectations of how things should happen. And this discovery phase in the morning of the first day allows us to just streamline our thinking and get aligned with each other. So I like to do something like I call the North Stars, and it's basically just a couple of questions that need to be true for the product. So what needs to be true for this product? What does success look like in a sentence? What is the business benefit of the sprint goal? And what is the sprint benefit for the product? And then what is the product goal? So I like to put these questions up somewhere in the room, that wherever there's a debate or a disagreement, if you look at the North Stars, they kind of guide every single decision that's ever made about the product, and we keep coming back to that as a team. So it's pretty important to get those aligned and upfront from the beginning. So these stars also change. They're able to change at any given point. It just depends how the team is feeling. So we had a sprint recently where the North Stars actually changed on the third day, which I'll take you through in my next slide. But that allows the team to realign and move on. So that brings me to my next point, is Movember. So Movember is a really beloved client of ours, and we've just finished a sprint with them, and we released the new app now, which is available in the app stores. So is anyone here participating in Movember this year? There you go, we got 1, 2 people. Okay, that's good. So I'll just take you through some of our artifacts from that sprint. This was an example of the goals that we set out on the first day. You can see, so it's super lo-fi, we do it together, it's really messy, we just get everyone involved. The product goal was to enable a MOBO is the user, to be the best fundraisers that they can be by creating a premier app experience. The sprint goal of what we actually wanted to do within the 5 days was to create an experience that creates more brand exposure and user motivation to share. So we wanted to create better context. By the end of day 3, the goal had changed to create an experience for signed up users that guides them through their Movember journey. And we did this because halfway through the sprint, we realized that we wanted to focus on our existing customers and reward the people that were already involved in doing such a great job on the platform. So the second part of day 1 is the map and sketch. So mapping and sketching, basically, we'll start getting our personas together and our user interviews. And this allows us to get in the mindset of the user. So we'll be able to create personas based off behavior rather than a role. And that also allows us to just do some insight gathering. So we do our interviews with people that are using the app, interviews with people that we want to essentially be the target market. And then we'll also do an existing product demo. And the existing product demo allows us to get to know the competition better. So basically, it's very seldom that we reinvent the wheel. There are products out there that are doing really good things. They're doing good jobs. What do we like about them? What don't we like about them? What are they failing at? What are they doing good at? So we have a bit of a competitor analysis, essentially. And these things are really important to do, but it's also to save time. We do it as a bit of contextual homework. So we do that before the sprint actually starts. So you can go in on the first day and everyone's aligned with our personas, our interviews, and our existing product demos. From there, we'll do an exercise called How Might We's. It's really a great exercise to kind of map out the group's priorities. And basically, a how might we is to frame a problem as a solution. So an example would just be, how might we make an awesome presentation for the UX meetup? So then you think about a problem as a solution and you start coming up with like really creative ways of answering those questions. And you should come up with a couple each, I mean, as many as you can, essentially, with the people in the room. And then we kind of start grouping them into the themes that we pick up. And basically, it just allows us to see what our priorities are. From there, we'll map, which is basically the key players' interaction with the product. So we pick a user, and we make a user journey for them. And I use a framework like a discovery, learning, using, and goal. So we write down every single way that, this is an example for Movember, we write down every single way that they could essentially discover the app. So we decided we wanted them to discover it from the Movember.com website. So we used that as the main point of entry. The learning is what we actually want them to do on the app. So we said sign in and then get orientated within the new app. And then using the app, we wanted them to take a photo and use the filters. Also look at the total amount of donations they have made. And then the goal. We circled our goal is to make their profile, to make a photo of their profile picture and to ultimately share it from there. So sharing content. So from there, we'll start sketching. Now we've got our user flow together. This is when we start sketching. And sketching is a pretty fun exercise to do together. So again, there's kind of a misconception around sketching. I think a lot of people think you have to be really good at drawing or you have to be a creative, and I just don't think that's true. Basically, ugly is good, words are important, call it something, focus on one idea at a time and make it self-explanatory. If you can do that, you can sketch. And if you can draw a square, a circle, and a triangle, you can sketch. So that's the basics of it. And I know it's also, in that situation, it's good to read the room. There are different sketching exercises. One of them is called Crazy Eights. I don't know if anyone's done that, but you basically do 8 ideas in 8 minutes. And I've just found that kind of overwhelming to give clients like a blank piece of paper and a pen and be like, give me 8 ideas. Doesn't sit well sometimes. So you just got to read the room and see how people best want to go about it. Sometimes it's best to like give people 20 minutes, come back. You can brainstorm, do your thing. Just depends on what type of client you're working with, really. This is an example of a sketch. Basically, you've just got to get the most basic kind of idea across and just get it out to the team. So on day 2 is when we start to create and define. And we do an exercise called the dot vote. This, again, it's a really great exercise where everyone in the room will get about 5 or 6 sticky dots, and you're allowed to go around the room and kind of figure out what ideas you like. What doesn't work for you. If you like something, you can put a dot next to it. And that can be an idea, it can be a sentence, it can be some copy, it can be the overall arching idea, it doesn't matter. But where you put your dot is where you're putting your vote, essentially. So again, it allows us to almost heat map our priorities as a group. So no one has a particular hierarchy or a say over something. So this is just an example of some students at Monash doing a dot vote in silence because you can't sell your idea. You've got to go around the room and read it quietly and figure out what you like. And we take the most voted on solutions and we use that as the product. So this is just an example of actually laying out what that user flow looks like. So from A, opening the app, to the end of actually thanking the first person for their donation. So we'll take that flow and put it into a sketch or into a storyboard. And normally we use about 15 or 12 to 15 frames for a storyboard, which is the most realistic way of actually being able to make that prototype in about 1 or 2 days. So again, very lo-fi, just the wireframes, just the bare bones of what needs to happen and what you actually want to test at the end of this. So that will essentially be our prototype. So on day 3, we start prototyping. We normally use Sketch and Envision and also Craft to get our prototypes going. At the moment, we're also using Figma as a software. So you can see that this is just a really lo-fi version of what we wanted to test with our users. We had the idea of making a timeline that you can swipe through and will take you through your Movember journey. And then we also had the idea of dynamic stickers. So it's super lo-fi. We just wanted to put it in front of clients, see how it would test, and go from there. So this is just an example of our sketch file. And you can see we use a software called Craft, which kind of spaghettis up the screens together and will ultimately make a clickable prototype that we can test. But there's no code involved. Nothing is coded up. Nothing's developed. It's purely just design. It saves a lot of time and money. So on day 4 or day 5, we start testing. And that's when we actually put the clickable prototype in front of users and we see what their reaction is. So we'll normally set up like a testing interview. I'll do an interview with whoever we're testing with. And then the rest of the team will be in a separate room. And we use a software called Lookback. And that can test gestures, facial features, sound. So we record the interview as well. And we start doing our tests. So normally we set up a grid system. Again, we use a lot of sticky notes. We set up a grid system of the areas that we want to test. So an example would be the onboarding, dashboard, donations page, whatever sections you want to test, we set up a grid system. And then we test from there. So in the other room, the other team members will start listening. And you'll see the green sticky notes are for things that are good and working well. And then the red is for things that are confusing, areas that a user's getting stuck. And we normally test with 5 people. That's like 5 is the magic number to start picking up on patterns and relative information. And you can start seeing like different patterns from our sticky notes and where people are getting stuck. And from there, we'll know our patterns. So what are the outcomes of a sprint? Basically, the solutions are always outcomes-based, which means that it's not about the client, it's not about us, it's always user-based. So all our stuff is backed up by real users. So we have a clear test and release process. So by testing and iterating smaller sections of a product, we're able to mitigate the risk of bigger products, and we generally get everyone on the same page. So there's always space to experiment and to iterate. This gives us the freedom to kind of explore risks and to take chances and to figure out where we want to go and push the product further. And allows us to make something really powerful with our time. So, in conclusion, what have we learned from design sprints? So I found it's always best to just make a call. It's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to fail as long as you're failing forward. And this is how we learn. So if you have a decision, make it. Be a yes and person. So I personally try to never start a sentence with no, because I find it just kind of shuts down the creative energy of a person in the room. It's the same kind of concept for teams and anyone, basically, friends, partners, etc. Just be a yes and person to get the conversation going. I found it's better to ask a question before you give an opinion. Generally, if you put a lot of strong-minded people in a room together, it kind of feels like everyone is just waiting their turn to share an opinion and not actually investigate what someone is talking about. And again, it just comes back to the reality that there are 7 billion different realities. So everyone's got something to offer. Everyone's got something to say. So it's best to investigate someone's thoughts than to kind of talk over it. So share your shit is something that I've kind of had to learn to do. And again, it just comes down to there's a freedom in transparency. So if you're good at something, say you're good at that. If you're not that good at something, say you maybe need help with it. If you don't know something, ask. I know for me, like, I'm not the best visual designer, so I'm good at other things. I'm good at like more UX design. So if I'm getting stuck on a buttons gradient for 2 hours, I'm not doing anyone any favors. So it's best to just say that and move on and get someone in your team who is good at that. So be a nice human and design for people and not necessarily technology. So I've seen a couple of products that they're designed around a technology, which they kind of fade really quickly because it's either a fad or like there's no kind of human interaction or there's no human element in it. So design for people and not the other way around. And then again, just be a nice person, like just speak in a human way. I know I did an interview once with a user and I think I asked him like what his nighttime online behavior was. In hindsight, it must have sounded like I was asking if he watched porn. But I actually just wanted to know like what apps he likes to use at night, you know, so it's just like bring it back to that human element. And then have a chat. So we all process information really differently. So it's just important to get to know your teammates, get to know your clients, and start building that trust, because the chat will equal clarity. I know many moons ago, my computer science teacher told me something that stuck with me was to ask a question like you're asking Google. So instead of saying weather, you could say, what is the weather today in Melbourne? You're going to get a better answer and a better response. So it might be like over communication, but at the end of the day, you're going to get that clarity that's so important. So some of the stuff I'm reading, which really helps for design sprints and UX in general, is the Lean UX book, which is basically just like the work Bible. Sapiens is an amazing book I'm reading now, which is basically just all about humans if you want to get to know people better. Radical Candor is by an author called Kim Scott, which is really just getting those uneasy conversations going in a really human way. Creativity Inc. is about the creative director of Pixar and how he runs his teams. And then the Sprint book, which is really just also like a work Bible of the design sprint. What I'm listening to is The Crazy One by Stephen Gates. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but he's really good. It's just a lot of actionable insights into design thinking. And he's the creative director of Envision. And he's also just got a really nice, soothing voice if you've had a hard day at the office. And then what we're watching, I know a lot of people from my office also watch Adrian Smart, the YouTube channel. They're really good for just like short, sharp content on all things about the design sprint and just design thinking and how you can push your teams and your products and your whole business and company forward. And then also just the main thing is to have fun. Thank you.